advice for the current leader of the federal NDP would be what?
Would be work hard with the delegates of this convention and the party across the country to learn what went well and or learn from what went well rather, and learn from what didn't go so well in the campaign, and take those lessons forward to do better next time.
Through a process that was quite similar. Do you have any advice on whether 70% is an acceptable threshold for a leader to step down or not step down?
Well, I mean, I guess what I would say to that is I'm not one that tends to be someone who is talking about the numbers game. I think that other folks are doing that quite well. What I would say, though, is that I think this convention is an important opportunity for our party to come together, to have that discussion, to have that debate, and to land on a place that'll take us into the future. Look, I'm from Ontario. I know the difference between what Liberals say during an election and what happens in a very short order after they've been elected to a majority government. We're seeing all kinds of cuts to social services. We're seeing all kinds of cuts to health care. We are seeing the sell-off of our public assets. These are none of the things that Liberals talked a good game about during the campaign. And so what I would say to Tom and to the federal team is you have to be strong and you have to learn from our experiences, if you will, in the campaign, because there is no doubt in my mind that Ontarians have shown what Canadians will see, and that is big disappointment from a Liberal majority.
What do you say to people? I mean, Mr. Mulcair is in a similar situation to you in the sense you have a respectable finish to your election, but not the desired finish to your election. So what does he have to say to his members here to persuade them that he's worth giving him a second chance?
Well, I mean, again, I did the same work that Tom did. You're right to identify that after the disappointing election that we had in Ontario. I mean, let's face it. I mean, we've had elections that are disappointing. We've had elections that are extremely exciting, like the one right here in Alberta. But the most important thing is to connect with the membership, and certainly Mr. Mulcair has tried to do that over the last number of months, and today and tomorrow he'll be doing that some more, and then on Sunday morning he'll make his final pitch to the delegates. I don't know what is in his speech. I haven't seen it, but I have said that I'm supportive of this leader going forward to lead our party, because I believe he has what it takes to learn those lessons, both the positive ones and the negative ones from the campaign experience, and to use those to make our party stronger, to create the kind of excitement that we are starting to feel here in this convention this weekend, and to take that excitement right through to the next federal election.
To lead until the next election, or just until 2018?
Well, again, this is always a decision of the delegates, and so we'll see. Taking one step at a time. So we'll see what happens after Sunday in terms of what the delegates decide, and then we'll talk about those things after.
You want him to lead the party? I'm just asking, do you want him to lead the party into the next election, or just until 2018?
Well, again, I think that it's an opportunity for us to have that discussion here, and we'll have another leadership review, as we always do as part of our process as New Democrats. Every convention, every couple of years, there's an automatic leadership review. And I'm going to wait until that next leadership review to see where we head from there. But I have every confidence that Mr. Mulcair has what it takes to take those lessons that he learned in the last election and turn them into gold for this party.
Going into the last election, Mr. Mulcair said that he learned from the provincial party's mistakes in losing seats in Toronto and losing the vote in Toronto. He lost all of his seats in Toronto. What do you think the NDP, both provincially and federally, needs to do to reconnect with voters in the GTA and turn it into some elected members?
Well, I mean, I can tell you we're already doing that work in Ontario, and it's been made a lot easier by a premier who is so disappointing to the people in the GTA. I mean, everywhere I go now, people talk about the disappointment in Kathleen Wynne, and whether that's a disappointment on the sell-off of Hydro One, whether that's disappointment in the fact that in Toronto particularly, we once again see child poverty numbers escalating instead of reducing, or whether it's the cutbacks to healthcare, where we see people not being able to get the services they need, whether it's in hospital, whether it's home care, whether it's in long-term care facilities. I mean, the bottom line is this government has been a big disappointment. So we're continuing to talk about the things that matter to people, and it's making a big difference. Just last weekend, I talked about the fact that New Democrats, when we form a government in 2018, are going to move our province to a $15 minimum wage. I've talked about the fact that we have to look at the fundamentals that people care about and are concerned about, particularly things like our healthcare system, our education system, both of which this government in Ontario has been cutting back on, but also the fact that people can't get a good job. People cannot find good work. Sometimes people are working 2 or 3 jobs just to make ends meet, and people are feeling very, very insecure in our province. And so between the vision that we set out and the severe disappointment that people are feeling with the Liberal majority in Ontario, I think 2018 is going to be an excellent opportunity for New Democrats.
Respectfully, that's exactly the message that he took in that election. $15 minimum wage, education, healthcare. These are the things that he said and lost all of his seats in Toronto.
Well, I mean, you and I both know that every election is different. Every campaign is different. What was that thing that you guys always used to say? Campaigns matter. They absolutely do matter. And so I don't think you take a cookie cutter approach and say, well, we fought this campaign this way, and so we're going to do a total 180 and fight the next campaign another way. No one can predict what the scenario is going to be like in 2018 or at the next federal election. Nobody can predict what the ground is going to look like, if you will. But the important thing, I think, is to be sensitive to what that ground looks like and react to the cards that you're dealt during the campaign, as well as setting up in terms of the work you do prior to a campaign.
Can I ask you what you think of the LEAP manifesto?
I'm sorry?
What do you think of the LEAP manifesto?
Look, I mean, there's a lot of people that put a lot of hard work into coming up with these very broad visions of the future. I believe that there's going to be some debate and some discussion of that document here at convention, and I look forward to seeing what New Democrats decide around the very many aspects of that document.
Especially the aspect that we should not build a new energy infrastructure that locks us into extracting more fossil fuels. What do you think?
Well, again, I think that there's an opportunity for New Democrats to look carefully at that document. We certainly have not done that at the provincial level, and I know that there's going to be a look at it, I believe, here at this convention, or at least in many of the ridings around the country, and I look forward to that discussion. Look, there are lots of huge challenges facing our country, facing the people in our country, facing the world when it comes to climate change, and we have to take those things seriously. Having said that, I'm not going to stand at the mic and presuppose what New Democrats land on in terms of their decision in going forward with policy pieces that may stem from that document. But what I can say is that I think that document has stimulated really important discussion and debate, not only within the New Democratic Party of Canada and of Ontario, but frankly with Canadians from coast to coast to coast.
Just a little while, there's...
You can't sort of predict what the conditions will be of the next election. Tom Mulcair was chosen as the one that could defeat Stephen Harper. Now you know who you have to defeat. The enemy is Justin Trudeau. Mm-hmm. Is Thomas Mulcair still the guy that you think can take down Justin Trudeau when he already didn't in the last election?
Well, as I said before, I'm in a province where people thought that that heaven had arrived when the premier that we have took office, and 2 short years later, things are quite different. So that's why I say people need to think about the skills, the capacity, the experience that Tom brings to the table, and recognize and know that in 4 years' time, things might look very different here in Canada.
In a little while, there's going to be a review of what went wrong. Just in about 2 hours, there's going to be a review. It's going to be a bare-knuckle session. They're going to be talking to the committee that did the review of what went wrong in the last election. You were there. You lived it. You were in Ontario. If you had 1 or 2 things to point to that went wrong in Ontario in the last federal campaign, what was it?
Well, again, I think this is a better discussion for the party brass to have and the delegates to have at their meeting. There are many things that I think people will bring to the table, but it's true that once the momentum was gaining for the Liberals during the campaign, it was really tough to turn that momentum around. And I think there may or may not be suggestions of how things may have gone differently for us, and I think that discussion may reveal some of those things. But there's no doubt it was a tough campaign whereas the momentum for the Liberals grew, our ability to hold that back or to change direction or change the channel, if you will, of our campaign wasn't where it could have been, perhaps.
If the delegates, the members, feel as though they need a new leader, should they do it now rather than later in 2018?
Well, again, I mean, I think that's part of the discussion that's happening at this convention. I think that's some of the discussions that people will be having over a coffee or maybe even a beer over the next couple of days. And I'm going to leave that decision to them. I mean, I've said that I think that that Mr. Mulcair has gained a great deal of experience, a great deal of knowledge, a great deal of capacity to lead the party going forward, and that's a position I've taken quite publicly.
Time for 2 more questions. Speaks about Bernie Sanders. Is Tom Mulcair has what it takes to be that Bernie Sanders? It seems that people want to dream a little bit here, and some people compare Mr.
We're new
Mulcair.
Democrats. We never dream. What are you talking about?
But I mean, a lot of people talked about Tom, about angry Tom. Is he really the person who can, impersonate that change that people want here?
Well, I mean, I think that that delegates are going to have that discussion. But look, every campaign is different. Every leader is different, and every kind of circumstance that you're facing creates a different environment for you to respond to and react to. And I mean, I believe that Tom has the capacity to inspire and to make people feel proud and to energize New Democrats, and that's what this convention's all about. And so, at the very least, when we come out to the end of the convention on Sunday, we'll have a group of New Democrats from this entire country who are prepared to take on the future and to hold Liberals to account, so that Canadians actually have a government that is responsive to their needs.
Very clear to me. So, as a leader of the NDP in Ontario, do you agree with the construction of a new pipeline?
I'm sorry?
Do you agree with the construction of a new pipeline?
Well, again, I don't believe that. Let me tell you what we've said in Ontario, because I think it's pretty important. In Ontario, what we've said is that if there's to be a pipeline that goes through the province of Ontario, we need to make sure it has a full environmental assessment. We want to make sure that Ontarians can feel confident that anything of that nature, infrastructure of that nature, is not going to cause serious problems for Ontarians in terms of environmental impacts. Thanks. Thanks very much. I've actually given you the position that we've taken in Ontario, that before any pipeline gets built, what we want to see is a full environmental assessment for our province.
For the Canada East pipeline. She says it has gone through the due process in Ontario.
Well, again, we don't believe that a short-shrifted federal process is adequate. We think an Ontario full environmental assessment is required. Thank you.